Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we're already in the middle of the week. It's amazing how fast time flies. Our calling number is 646-200-4169. Call in and ask your questions. Dr. Michael Ryce.
Good morning, dear heart.
Good morning.
Do we have any callers on the line? Do we have any questions or thoughts in the chat room yet?
Right now, there's just a hooray. The chat room's working on time. And we've got Tim and David and myself and you on the phone right now. So hopefully everybody will start flowing in here.
All right. Awesome. Good morning, Tim and David. How are you gentlemen this morning?
Doing great.
Good. Dr. Tim?
I'm doing quite well, thanks. We're experiencing the rain and storms from through Oklahoma recently, and now they're coming in waves through our area. But I'm high and dry and happy to be here.
Oh, cool. Good. Well, we are, I'm not sure how high we are here, but we're dry in Charleston View, Nevada. I'm looking out at, it's about 70, probably 75, starting to warm up here in the desert, and I'm looking out at Mount Charleston. The name of the town is Charleston View because you can see Mount Charleston from here. And it's still snow-covered. And they tell me it might be for another few weeks yet. So welcome to our show today, and if you're new to the show, the topic of our work is why is this happening to me again, and what you can do about it. If you've ever found yourself stuck in a pattern, playing out the same old stuff again and again, then we've got some answers and some tools for you. And so, if you're new to the show, our call-in number is 646-200-4169. It's wonderful to have calls. That definitely keeps the energy alive and moving. And or you can tap in on the chat room if you go to www.whyagain.com. Jeanie's up at the top of the homepage. Jeanie's got some instructions for how to access the radio show from the Internet and the forgiveness process from the Internet. You can download the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, freely. Spanish, English, German, Russian, Farsi. And on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. If you're interested in the forgiveness process that we're teaching, which is the opposite of what this culture teaches as forgiveness, forgiveness has nothing to do with letting other people off the hook for what's happening inside of you. It's the tool with which you go inside yourself and change the parts that perhaps you've hidden from yourself and maybe you get stuck in. So that the explanation of that is under the link on Download Worksheets. The first link there is a new chapter 24 from the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And it gives some of the new insights on the Aramaic Forgiveness process. The second link is a reality management worksheet. Please tap in. Put the pen to the paper. Watch what happens. It's amazing. So do either of you gentlemen have anything on your minds this morning? Or Jeanie, do you have any thoughts?
I have something from yesterday, Michael.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about our original nature as love and how no matter what's happened to us for how many decades of conditioning or traumas, that source as love has never been damaged or tapped. It can't be hurt. You remember that part of the conversation?
Absolutely.
Well, a very powerful way to talk about that I came across from a master therapist who does a variety of hypnosis work was to say, let's imagine that I go to meet a friend from college. I haven't seen him in about 20 or 25 years, and he agrees to meet me for lunch. And when I show up for lunch, he's there. It's Bob. He's doing fine. But I notice his entire right arm is missing at the shoulder, and his sleeve is tucked in his shirt. And we have the lunch. We reminisce about all the time from college, and it's a very nice lunch. And I go home and I say to my wife, when she asked, so how was the lunch? I said, well, it was okay, but, Bob only brought part of himself to lunch. Well, I would never say that. Bob brought most of himself to lunch. He left part of himself at home. That's a crazy way to think. And yet, the essence of who Bob is, all of the essence of who Bob is, was there at lunch. He has an arm, but he is not the arm.
Right.
He has a body, but he's not the body.
Right.
He is that essence of love, and that essence of love can't be hurt or damaged or diminished in any way, even if part of the physical body is hurt, or even if he goes through an emotional trauma. And it just struck me so powerfully with that image of having somebody who loses a body part. I would never think to say they lost most of themselves. They're still there. I still have the relationship with them. Their essence of love is still there. So that was something from yesterday I wanted to throw out.
That's a powerful way to say it. Being lives. Definitely a powerful way to recognize it and to recognize with all the drama and traumas that people go through that they are not their dramas and traumas. However, we can build an identity, a false self, based on those drama and traumas. And if we slip into thinking that's who we are, then we tend to play the why is this happening to me again game. And so the forgiveness process is really about how we go inside ourselves and take apart the things that we have accepted about ourselves that aren't true.
Well, and there's a key in your worksheet, the 12-step worksheet that we do most in our support group, which says, I choose to let go of identification with my hostility and fear. And I talk to people each time we go through that about how notice that when I do that, I say those words, I don't instantly eliminate all my hostility or fear, but I move from feeling like I'm so angry, which is identifying with the anger, to a position that says, I'm here and I'm aware of some energy of anger. I'm no longer identifying myself with that energy of anger. It's just an energy.
Precisely.
And anytime I identify with anything, I limit myself to that definition of that identification, and as long as I'm identified with that thing, I block any further learning.
You mean if I identify myself as a body, I block learning?
Yes. If I identify myself as a Christian, or if I identify myself as a Michael Ryce follower, or if I identify myself as angry, in any of those moments, the process of identifying myself as something limits me tremendously exclusively to whatever I've identified myself as. And it prevents learning or expanding or growing in any other way until I'm willing to, as you ask us to in the worksheet, let go of my identification with whatever it is. And in this worksheet's case, it's hostility or fear, any thought of hostility or fear.
Yeah, you go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and he says, in order for you to live, you've got to die, which in any traditional sense, people would say, well, what does that mean? How do you die to live? But if you have identified with something less than what you are, and you think of yourself as that, you function as that, you language yourself as that, then you, in effect, become that. And that's the self that he's talking about that has to go. And that's the reason for that thought of I let go of all identification with whatever it is, so that letting go of what I've taken on in my mind, what I've held in my mind and in my body, I have the opportunity to directly experience who I am. And just to give everybody a clue, because the culture creates all kinds of crazy definitions for we humans, the best way that I found to begin on the path, if you've lost the experience of it, to begin on the path of experiencing and living out of a human life, and that is just hold a newborn child. And as you hold that newborn child, you'll know exactly what human life is. And then the work becomes to live from that space of a human life, instead of live from the space of I'm something my father called me, I'm something my mother called me, I'm something that, my friends called me, whatever. Because those energies, and there's this awesome warning system that we have that tells us when we're identifying as something less than what we are. We have pain. And pain is the energy that results from holding on to what doesn't belong in your structure, what doesn't belong to you, what isn't you. And sadly, we've gotten into, and we can still carry on the theme of our codependent conversation for the last couple of weeks. Sadly, our culture's taught us when we're feeling some kind of pain that if we blame somebody else, somehow that's going to help. You made me angry, you made me sad, you made me afraid. And if I have anger, sadness, or fear in me, it's because I have anger, sadness, or fear in me. It's not because of what you did. And so stepping back into that interdependent state, we can invite and ask for support in throwing out the things that we've identified with that are not who we are, and arriving back again for the first time for most people in memory to the direct experience of the active presence of love. I don't know if Terry's on the line, but Terry, we called in a few days ago. Terry is the artiste in residence at Heartland and the project coordinator with the community. And Terry was sharing after having come from a pretty traumatic home and a pretty traumatic life, heavy duty, beyond what the average person would call heavy duty upbringing in life. And he shared with us how the other morning he had the experience of waking up totally connected to love, totally feeling and experiencing himself as love. Now, if you had talked to Terry 2 years ago, and I don't know if you're there, Terry, maybe we can talk to you. I know that he's in Nashville, North Carolina right now, and we've done some projects there. But if you were to talk to Terry, you very quickly find out that just about anything else was possible from his family system. Any kind of terror, trauma, abuse was the norm. And as a result of the work that he's done, he finds himself waking up, surrounded in, directly experiencing in the cellular structure of his body the active presence of love. I would offer that a human life. That's our normal state. And it's like in this culture, it's virtually unheard of. We say, well, I love my kids, and that's something that I do to my kids. I love my spouse. I love my country. I love. And the truth is, we don't love. We are love. We don't love. Love isn't a verb. It's not something we do. If we're functioning out of a human life, the active presence of love, there are certain behaviors that we'll do. And it won't be about loving someone else. It will be about being the experience of love in someone else's presence. And when we're not able to be that experience, then we know we're identified with something else. We know that this body-mind unit has a story, and the story is usually based in the dynamics of the power person. A story, and usually our mind will tell us the story about somebody else in our lives. The story is that I'm in pain, or I'm not fulfilling my life, or I'm not doing, whatever it is because of what somebody else is doing, saying. There's an old adage that says, bloom where you're planted. And you can stand right exactly where you are right now. And if you're willing to do the work that Yeshua prescribed, then the self that isn't you and the story that isn't you will fall apart. I don't care how deep your trauma has been. It doesn't matter how terrible the thing was that happened to you. It doesn't matter how terrible the thing was that you did. When you allow that story to fall apart, and Tim just pointed out the key step in the 12-step worksheet, I release identification with this. and I realize that I am the stuff called love. Transforms everything. Jeanie, good morning. Do we have any callers on the line or anybody in the chat room with any thoughts or questions? By the way, I don't know if I've thanked you lately for doing that. I know the first show or two that we did, I tried to do the chat room at the same time as I was doing the show, and that was bizarre. Certainly didn't work. So you monitoring that and running the switchboard is an awesome gift. Thank you.
You're welcome. We did have somebody with their hand up, and they just disappeared. So whoever it was, if you'll call back in or press 1, we have more people listening on the switchboard than we actually have in the chat room. Oh, they just popped back in, and I think it's Lady Jane.
Yeah, it
You're
is.
on the air.
Okay, it is. Hi, guys.
Jane, how are you this morning, young lady?
I'm fine. It's nice to hear your voice and what you were saying. And I was thinking about what he said about the arm missing. The heart is, where the love, there's a lot of emphasis about love with the heart. And if someone would just had a heart, they would still be there. That's what came to my mind. Anyway, I wanted to share. But here's what I wanted to share, too. Just about a half hour ago, my neighbor came over, and he's a born-again Christian, and he came to the church, and he liked it. He said it's a feel-good church. But he didn't believe, he wanted to know what I believed. I said, how many hours do you have? That's, anyway, he wanted to know what did I believe, that Jesus died for my sin and went to hell, got the people out of hell and saved all the souls. And I took a deep breath, and I said, no, I don't. Don't believe that at all. Because, I talked to him about the Christ consciousness within. But he's stuck in that story. And the important thing was I was holding love, and that he didn't get angry and I didn't. We allowed each other to believe whatever we wanted to believe without getting upset about it, which was really cool because I was breathing love at the time. But anyway, he said, well, what do you think Jesus did? And I said, well, I don't think he did all the things that you thought he did. But there's a million books out there that have different interpretations. And then I talked to him about Aramaic. We went right over his head. Didn't want to participate in that. But I said, that makes such a difference what his language was. It's always going to make a difference. So anyway, I just had that encounter, and I'm just sharing it with you.
Yeah. If you go back to Yeshua, he says the power of life and death is in your words. And it's interesting how many people don't want to engage in the words and the conversation that he had.
Right.
Like there's a faction of people who want to believe in him, but they don't want to believe him. Now, if he says the power of life and death is in your words, then obviously the conversation he had would be the most important conversation to engage in.
Right.
But I've actually had many preachers who, I literally had one day that said, I don't care what Jesus said. It's like, you don't care what he said, and you say you believe in him. And my invitation to people is to believe in him. Yeah, it's an awesome space that he held, but then take the next step, and that is believe him. And I always find it interesting that if you believe him, you have to read the passage that he quotes from the Old Testament. I forget who the prophet was that he quotes, but on 2 occasions he says, if you only understood, my Father does not want your sacrifices.
Right.
And yet, there's a whole conversation, and you look at, if you knew what he was talking about, if the power of life and death is in your words, it's pretty important to recognize he said, no, don't do that, and yet there's a whole theological belief based in sacrifice, that it was a demand made by love. Right. And, sooner or later you got to pick your brain up and say, do I believe him, or do I believe in a story that I was told by somebody who did not have the experience?
Right.
And if you listen to him, he says the first law is you've got to come to the point where you are love in the presence of anything to do with the Creator, your neighbor, or yourself, that you've got to have that experience, and it's upon that direct experience, he says, upon this hangs the law and all its prophets. In other words, what I hear him saying is if you don't have a direct present experience, we were talking about Terry waking up in that experience. If you don't have that direct experience, then when you look at the scriptures, instead of being able to see what's really there, your listening of the scriptures will be about what's in your brain cell structure.
Yeah,
and if the conversation in your head is based in hostility and fear, then you'll see all kinds of reasons for hostility and fear. And, murdering somebody in order to redeem the world will make sense out of that hostile and fearful conversation, though it's totally and directly against what he said.
Yep.
So somewhere we've got to start to understand, and he gave us some powerful, powerful instructions. And, I don't usually try to enter into that other conversation with people because it's a no-win. It's so fear-based, they're impaled with that right from early childhood, and it's not easy to pull that spear out. And so, as opposed to wanting to change somebody's mind about that one, it's like, well, okay, let's listen to what he said. Let's use the tools he said to use, and let's see what kind of an experience you have. And what will happen is you'll have an experience exactly like Terry, who's been through so much trauma in his life. You'll have a direct experience of the presence of the love of God in your body. It's interesting how many people spend years and years and years in churchianity, and they never have that experience. There's lots of nice words, lots of nice things happen, but they never have that direct physical experience, and that's the experience we're designed for. And when we start to come from that, instead of some kind of a belief system, that somebody who didn't have the prerequisite experience made up, that belief system, then a whole different process happens, and we become empowered. And what we want to have here, and what we're looking to do with the MindShifters Radio and our MindShifters support group, is have an empowered conversation about healing lives and having us return to the experience of the presence of love. And we are glad that you're on our team for doing that up there in Banana.
Yeah. Well, I did have that experience, and it was the process of holding the space of love and not getting into right or wrong. And, of course, I feel a lot better because of that, because it wasn't about making someone wrong.
Right.
But the experience was holding a space of love. And when I do that, you really feel a lot better, and you don't lose your energy.
Yes.
Okay, one more thing I wanted to share. When you were talking about holding a baby, you've said that many times. Well, I sent an email to you, and it was about a puppy. And I got so tickled about the love and the innocence of this puppy. So it also applies the innocence and the love when you see a kitty or a puppy. It's the same kind of feeling, innocence, I think. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're out in Las Vegas working with Dr. Andraki, who's a medical doctor. He's associated with several medical centers out here, and we've been training his staff and working with his staff and just kind of supporting him in grounding in the practice that he has, supporting people in the healing process. And one night he did the support group. We weren't there. And he did the support group here, and he was doing, he invited people to, think about the baby and hold the baby. And it was funny when his wife reported back to us, when Claudia reported back to us afterwards, said, and then Dr. Andraki said, and don't drop the baby. Don't drop the love. You got. It's like when you hold that newborn, you want to have that newborn right there in front of you for the rest of eternity. Don't drop the baby, which it's kind of not such great regulatory speech, but it was kind of cute to hear his way of saying it. Don't drop the baby. You got to keep that love present.
That's right.
It's real imperative, and the world has 1,000 invitations, and sadly enough, churchianity has 1,000 invitations for you to drop the baby and go into some form of hostility or fear. Right. Some conversation based on there's something wrong with somebody or whatever. And the truth is there's something out of place with all of us, but our business isn't that. Our business is being the space of love.
Right.
And that, to me, is why the understanding of that first law, that my task is to be the space of love. Even if somebody is so far off in space in what the world calls wrongness, their wrongness isn't my business. Now, if they want some support and some tools for coming back into alignment with what will bring them aliveness, great. But my job is to be that space of love. And the mind has so many excuses and so many stories to take us out of that. And each one of those stories is another opportunity to learn forgiveness, to dismantle and take apart that story so that we can return to the active presence of love, our true nature.
It's amazing how you can have a conversation with you and now you'll take off and how you explain things. It's really grand. And so I'm glad that you are my friend, you and Jeanie. And so I'm going to leave now. I'm not going to hang up, but I don't have anything more to say, which is kind of unusual.
Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate the support that you give us, and that your support just goes on, and we cherish you in our lives and sharing the planet with you.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you at Heartland this summer.
Hope so.
Cool.
Bye.
All right, blessings. Bye-bye. Jeanie, any other thoughts, questions?
They were just saying that you explained things so very well, and they appreciated it. We do have another hand up. Area code 546. You're on the air. Who do we have?
546, you're on the air. Could you give us a name and where are you from? Hello, area code 546. We're listening. Are you with us? Are you with us, 546? Can you hear us? And if you would share your name and where you're calling from?
There's a number missing on their phone number, so perhaps 546 isn't the area code. That's the first three that pop up, but there is a number missing. So whoever had your hand up, you were on the air. If you would speak, tell us your name and where you're from.
If you're on the phone and you hit one to ask a question or make a comment, please. You're on. Come on, talk to us. Okay, well, maybe they're disconnected. Maybe there's something out of place there, sweetie, so we'll let that go.
Okay. All righty.
Any other comments in the chat room or questions? That's to bounce off of or to look at?
Lisa's in there, and she says, I've been really looking at my views of right and wrong. That's my clue about how I've been holding unloving goals for others that have been cloaked in the guise of being friendly just because it's right.
Very cool. Well, we'll breathe with you on that one.
Okay, they called back in. Let's see if we can get them this time.
Okay.
Whoever just called in, you were there. Who do we have?
Hi, Jeanie, this is Nene.
Well, hi there.
Good morning.
Your number doesn't come across as a whole number, so that's really weird.
I apologize, I couldn't identify with those numbers, so it might not be somebody else. Hi.
Okay.
Glad you called in. Thank you for sharing, too. I got your email.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to share something about health and very nice experience. Yesterday when I called, I was on my way to my daughter's doctor here in the United States because she needs a letter with her appointment so she can obtain her visa to come in here. And I drove and I got there to the office, the doctor's office. I went inside and the letter was not ready. So I sat in the living room and they were playing a video about arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis and all that. And since I've been doing my healing work, I finally realized how painful it had been for me and for Lucy and how denied we put it. I mean, it was so locked that, it wasn't until the first MindShifter, that's when it came out. And this is my first time that I go to that office after the MindShifter. And I was there watching the video, and all these feelings came out. All these feelings, and I had all kinds of anger, sadness, all of those. And I was aware of them, of my pain, and never as painful when it was the first time that I opened. But then I sat down there and I said, this is the reason why the letter is not ready yet. So I started invoking Ruha de Kusha to heal me and restore me back to my love, and I had my daughter in mind, and I had my mother also in mind because she also had arthritis. So it was very powerful. And then finally the letter was ready. And then driving back, I stopped for a moment, and I was able to communicate with my daughter and ask for her support for my healing, for my feelings about it. And it created so much closeness between her and I. And, she's been doing her worksheets by herself. And I can see that the energy is a lot more easy. Something came out in the night. I started expectorating, sneezing and coughing, and something came out also. So I thought it was very powerful.
Awesome. Well, that's a powerful demonstration of the whole principle that if we're living in that connected space, the skill we develop is the ability to look inside and be aware of what's there. Oftentimes someone who would go into be in an unconscious state and sit in the environment with that video and those things start to move, they'd reach over for a Coke or they'd reach for some candy or something to anesthetize themselves. They'd sit and hold their breath and not feel and not deal with what that triggered in them. And one of the bottom lines of this work is there's a skill to be developed, and it's a skill that has been virtually unknown on the planet. Probably 99.999% of human beings that have ever lived have been so focused with the outer eye and what's going on out in the world that developing the ability to go to the inner space and be aware of things like what you just described, being in resonance or in residence inside of us, that anger and fear, and with the work that you've done over the months, that you've developed the skill to literally take hold of those things and throw them out. I mean, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes. That was awesome. And so this morning I woke up and I called my daughter again, and it was fine. And also I noticed that I have the capacity to feel energy of people that are not physically with us. And after doing this job, my antenna is more clear, and I've had messages from my mom and from my other brother. Very strong both. Fortunately, both times I was with my friend Maria, and it's all about that comfort and that breaking patterns, family patterns, and it's been very strong too in my life now.
Cool. Did you and Maria figure out whether the 9-day Y intensive is the one that you're coming to this summer?
Yeah, for the Y. That's
the one. Awesome.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Definitely, I can't wait.
Well, we're going to look forward to sharing the space with you guys and having you holding this space as part of the intensive and the contribution that you'll make and the work that you'll get to do. And we're delighted to be sharing it with you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nina, for your call, and thank you for the wonderful work you're doing. Thank
you. Great.
For those who might be new to the show. Oh, go ahead, please.
We're on the same path. I was just going to say Nene is one who is doing Spanish translations for us, as well as Dr. Andraki, his wife, Claudia, is doing Spanish translations. And we have so many out there now that on our website, www.whyagain.com, and over on the right-hand side where it says download worksheets, just underneath it says download worksheets in Spanish. And so we're getting all of that out there, and that's awesome, and we appreciate their support in getting that done. And Claudia is also now operating a Spanish support group here in Las Vegas. That information's on our website, too, under support groups. And they're just doing phenomenal work, and we just appreciate them helping us to get it into another language, and that's one language Michael and I have been talking about really immersing yourself into a Spanish home and learning it. So and Nene and her friend Maria are coming to do either Y or teachers training, perhaps both this summer. So we're looking forward to having them there. And I believe Claudia's coming for the exact same week. So it's going to be a phenomenal time.
Yes, and fortunately, one of the things that Dr. Andraki and Claudia supported us in was they actually we were in their office working with their Spanish community, and they hired a videographer to come in. So they've got some editing to do, but we will soon have the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop with the whole forgiveness process in Spanish. Claudia translated as we did the workshop, was part of the presence in the workshop, and so we're looking forward to be able to make the video available. And for those who might not know about it, when we're talking about intensives, we have a teaching center in the Ozarks in southern Missouri, a town called Theodosia. Interestingly enough, when I first bought the property in Theodosia, I was told that the word Theodosia meant gift of God. And then when I went and did some teaching in Greece, the Greeks shared with me that actually that wasn't quite the right translation of the word, that the word Theodosia means God in the act of giving. It's a verb. And so we're in that town, and we're about 7 miles outside of town. We've got what used to be a resort that we converted to a teaching center. So we have food facilities, and we have residents. We can actually handle up to 60 people, although we limit our intensives now to 30. And so we'll start a 65-day intensive. It looks like it's probably going to be, instead of 65, it's going to be 56 days at this point, and it will start on I believe it's the 18th of June, Jeanie. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but I think it's the 18th of June we'll start, or July, pardon me. Yeah, and we'll start with the 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and then that will turn into a 17-day teacher training. So if you're ready to take your work to the next level, you might want to jump on the website and look at the schedule. The schedule is under schedules. And our travel schedule, we're actually finishing up here in Pahrump, Nevada, and in Las Vegas, and we'll be heading on the 10th of June to the Oregon area. Will be up in Ashland, Medford area, doing a series of workshops there. So if you know anybody in Ashland or Medford, we'll be doing actually, I think we're going to do a total of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 workshops in that area. We're going to kind of blitz Medford and Ashland. So come and play with us if you're there. And Jeanie, any other questions? Hands up?
Yes, we do have a hand. We do have a hand up, and it's area code 765. You're on the air. I believe that's Lady Jane. Or have you put it up again, or are you just still on there from the other time?
I'm just still on here from the other time, honey.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Well, we're glad you're still with us. We're blessed.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
That's all the comments right now.
Okay. Well, David, we haven't heard your sweet voice yet this morning. Do you have anything to share with us?
Did you say me? Did you say David?
I did say you. Good morning, David. For those who are new to the show and don't know David, David is the property manager at Heartland. He carries on projects and teaching and all kinds of neat things while we're out here on the road, and we appreciate you and are glad you're here on the show every day. So do you have anything to share with us today?
You know, there's so much that is going on in my world, and the changes and the shifts. Part of what I like about having the radio show is to be able to interact with folks and where they're at and how things are evolving for them. For it's always a reflection of myself of where it is that I'm at and what it is that I'm listening to and hearing. And I'm always intrigued and excited about people calling in and asking, and or I call it challenging, because I think that if we're not, if there's not a challenge, if I'm not challenged with a thought or a belief that I have, then I can't learn anything new. I have a saying that two people that agree on everything, one's not needed. And we do need each other in the sense that of the support, and where the real learning comes from is being challenged. I was watching a video about the brain and how the brain operates, and it was called retraining the brain, in essence, is what it was. And they're really just talking about what it is that you're teaching here through the Aramaic, and it is amazing to think about 2,000 years ago that a man had this knowledge and this understanding that they're just now really being able to, how they define it, discover it, and to put it in the physical part of it as far as how the brain operates and so forth. And as I'm viewing it, it's like, yeah, but they're still missing the piece, this piece about forgiveness and changing and how to shift with that is what's so fascinating. And I think it's just where everybody is at. That's where I'm at. Part of a daily word that I read this morning is about acceptance, and I've changed my thoughts and views around what acceptance is. There's in the big book, it says, and acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. Whenever that I find something or someone out of place, it's because the fact that I'm in essence saying I know better than God, or I know better than the universe of what it is. And as long as I hold on to that, well, then I'm pretty well stuck. And I've shifted mine, and rather than acceptance is the answer to all of my prayers, then forgiveness is the answer to all of my prayers. And that opens up a lot of files about what forgiveness is. And forgiveness is really as simple as what you talk about. It's when I willingly let go of the way that it is that my mind is showing me of what it is that's going on. And when I can do that, when I practice that, then I get to be, quote, wrong, if there is such a thing as being wrong, and to learn something new. It's saying, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? The other piece of that is, do I want to be wrong and be miserable? So where's the choice at with all of that? So I'm always inviting and encouraging people, and part of my work is for me to do it coming from the place of accepting things the way where they are right now. And I so encourage people to take some action towards challenging yourself, challenging what it is that Michael's talking about on here and the different comments, and how you apply it in your life. Without applying it in the life, it just becomes another conversation out there. So that's where I'm at today.
Very cool. Well, I agree with you. Forgiveness is absolutely the key. And until we can engage in that process, what we'll end up accepting is the same things that have gone on forever in our bloodline. We'll get to play the same games over and over and over again. And I don't think we need to accept that. I think we can recognize that if I'm in some form of hostility or fear, there are tools, there is a technology for how to change that happening inside of me and how to move into a different space. And this work is about moving back continuously to that space of the active presence of love, which is what we are, and to experience ourselves as that. And then, crazy stuff can still happen in our world, but it doesn't have the power over us. It doesn't have the ability to control us. It doesn't have the ability to run our lives. Jeanie, comments, questions in the chat room?
Well, it never has controlled our life, with the exception of my unwillingness to take responsibility for my life. Unless that I own everything. I like that little saying, I cannot simultaneously be responsible for my life and blame someone or something for my life. It's impossible. It doesn't work that way. And when I totally make the statement, and I challenge and invite anyone to stand in front of a mirror, look yourself directly in the eye, and say out loud, I take total responsibility for my life, and watch and observe the body language, the thoughts that go through the mind, and the feelings that one has in doing that. And then you'll really get to be able to identify if you really believe what it is that you say, that you're totally responsible, that I take total responsibility for my life. And just as a way of challenging, and let us know what happens. Again,
the call-in number. Oh,
that's a good idea. 600-246. Wait a minute. What is it? 646. 646-200-4169. The challenge has been tossed out there.
And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your sweet voice and what your thoughts are on our conversation and what your questions are on approaching this thing called forgiveness from the inside and the ability to change the dynamics that go on in our lives. And we either succumb to the games of the world or we wake up to who we are and function out of an actual human life, out of the presence of love. David?
Yeah, I like that terminology and the language that you're using with that in interior forgiveness. That in itself just, makes it now a word link and a connection to the true meaning of really looking at what is forgiveness. Forgiveness begins internally. That's the only forgiveness that there really is. And I like how you've added that to that. It gives it a new dimension. When I talk with people now, that I refer to it, so have you done any interior forgiveness? And that in itself shifts the whole brain and the whole mind and the whole programs around. What are you talking about? Which then opens up the space of seeing it differently. So thank you for that little piece. I think that's key to being able to learn true forgiveness. For there's such a file that's opened up on forgiveness. Interior forgiveness really feels good for me to use now.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We're on it.
There's a quote by... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, sweetie.
I was just going to say there's a quote by Anthony Robbins that says, you are now at crossroads. This is your opportunity to make the most important decision you will ever make. Forget your past. Who are you now, and who have you decided you really are now? Don't think about who you've been, but who are you now? Make this decision consciously. Make it carefully. Make it powerfully.
Well, I certainly agree with him on all but one little piece in that quote, and that is if you, and a lot of people are trying to forget their past. Excuse me, it's not going to work to forget your past. If you don't deal with your past is going to deal with you because your past is going to become your present. And the reason for that is we had a gentleman who had the question the other day is, well, why should I deal with any of those things? I've put those things behind me. And we human beings are creators. Probably the greatest atrocity done to us down through the ages and that we've bought into is we've had hidden from ourselves the fact that we are by nature creators. And we create out of what we hold. And I use an example in the workshop. I'll invite everybody and recognize that there is a power in you that reaches out from you for whatever you hold in you. And so I'll do a little experiment in the classroom and I'll ask everybody, okay, I'm going to put an imaginary table up here in front of the room, And I'm going to ask everybody to please reach out. I'm going to put enough frogs on the table for everybody to pick one up. So would everybody please reach out and pick up a frog? So everybody reaches their arm out, and I invite them to look carefully, take a nice big, deep smell of this frog and really look at it carefully. And then I'll ask people to describe their frog. And somebody will say, well, it's green, and somebody will say it has brown spots, and somebody will say it has big eyes and, and a fat belly and, has suction cups on its fingertips, et cetera, et cetera. And then I let folks know that what I put on the table were enough frogs, 3 by 3 by 3 green styrofoam cubes that florists use to put flowers in. They're called frogs. But notice that you could only reach for what fired in your brain cell structure. Then I'll follow up to take the demonstration to another level, and that is, I'll ask the question, does anybody know how to reach your arm out? And, of course, there'll be a few people who look at me quizzically, like, of course, everybody knows how to reach their arm. Well, would you please explain the process to me? First of all, I want to know what brain cells fire in what area of the brain, at what voltages, what nerve pathways are followed with that current flow, what balance and counterbalance is there with what muscles to reach your arm out. And, I don't care how good you are at physiology, you don't know how to reach your arm out. You might kind of sort of approximate it, but the truth is we don't have a clue how to do it. We set an image, and something takes over and does it for us. Something takes the instruction set from what fires in our brain cell structure. And the only thing that can fire in your brain cell structure is what's there. And so if what's there, the next time I do that experiment, you might reach for a 3 by 3 green styrofoam cube. And I actually might put the little bar that goes under the strings in a violin. It's called a frog. I might put that on the table. And you can only reach for what fires in you, and there's a power in you. You go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and he says, of myself, I do nothing. I don't even know how to reach my arm out, in essence, is what he's saying. The Father within does the works. And then he goes on to say, you have a contract with that Father, and the contract you have with the Father is you just need to ask. You just need to fire the brain cells for frog, and the Father's going to reach for what fires in your brain cells. Why do we have to deal with the quote-unquote past? Because the past is now the present inside of us if we carry it as a frequency. And if that's what fires in us, let's say we have a traumatic event in a relationship, and what we do is we go out and we drink a fifth of scotch, try to drown our sorrows, and forget our troubles, forget our past. Well, perhaps with the fifth of scotch, etc., you might be able to keep that hidden for a little while, but that becomes an instruction set. And there's a power in you that says, in essence, ask me and I will bring it to you. Ask and receive. It doesn't say ask me for the good stuff, ask me for the nice stuff. It just says, I'm here as your servant. I am your partner in creation. I have given you permission to tell me precisely what you want. Tell me, and what fires in brain cells is what we're telling that power. And so if we hold a traumatic event from relationship that we refuse to deal with, then in essence, whenever we think relationship, just like when you think frog, brain cells fire and the power starts reaching. And what does it reach for? In essence, and I've shared in earlier sessions that we've done, the blessing I had about it's almost 30 years ago now, of doing some work with a gentleman named Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM. Marcel had the instrumentation in the laboratory with which to take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. So literally, if I hold a trauma, if I think, in relationship I always get beat up, and I get rid of the relationship where I'm being beat up, but I don't forgive the idea that I get beat up in relationship, then that remains stored in brain cells. I would not forgive the person who beat me up in relationship. If I chose to pardon them, what you did was in error, and I pardon you, and I choose to hold the space of love for you, that's wonderful, but that's not forgiveness. It's got nothing to do with letting them off the hook. If I don't go inside myself and remove the idea that I get beat up in relationships, if I don't forgive that idea, and forgiveness is something you apply inside of you, and the how of that is what we were talking about being that link on the website. If I don't forgive that, then what's constantly radiating out from me when I say I want relationship is a high energy wave that calls to all the world and says, hey world, I deserve to be beat up in relationships and I'm ready for another one. Is there anybody out there? Any volunteers? And you'll notice there's never a shortage of volunteers. Somebody will show up who will play exactly the game that you asked for because you asked for it. Why do I not want to forget my past? Because if I forget my past, I relegate that to the dissociated part of my mind. And the ancient teachings where they knew how this worked, they said, take care of the dissociated part of your mind. It's called the heart in Aramaic. For out of it are the issues in life. That's where the creative process expresses with whatever's firing most strongly in you. So the forgiveness process is about going back and removing those things from the past so that we can, with clarity and power, come forward and create something new and different. So we invite you to pick up the pen and the paper and go to work with that reality management worksheet. And as you forgive and you forgive and you forgive, and you go back to the master and he said, how many times am I going to have to do this? And in Aramaic he said 77 times 70, which means you're going to work through that issue on as many levels as you need to until you're done with it. And the internal process of Aramaic forgiveness is how you change the instruction set to the Creator. And once you reach to the very depths of the dissociated mind that hold, I always get abused in relationship, and one of the reasons why most people don't want to go to that depth is, well, but there's all kinds of pain there. Oh, I have these memories of trauma. Yes, and they're just memories of pain. Allow yourself to access them. Access them while love is conscious, active, and present in you, and they dissolve. Now that instruction set is gone, now out of being, I get to put into my field, I deserve awesome, supportive, nurturing, caring relationships. And now a high energy wave goes out from me. The Father within that does the works, instead of reaching for a frog, grasps me a prince or a princess. By the way, Jeanie, I appreciate you being the princess in my life for responding to that call. And so we each create what happens to us. Not that we are the creator. People sometimes, get off on the tangent of, I am the creator. Well, excuse me, you're not the creator. But you've got a pretty good in with the Creator. The Creator said, ask and you will receive. I'll give it to you. He said, of the works of my hands, command ye me. Tell me what you want. Now, somebody who sits and watches the news about, the economy's down and the jobs are being lost and it's poverty and houses are being lost and focuses. Yeshua gave us a clue. He said, let thine eye be single, thy body will be filled with light. A focus on that, and what are you asking the Creator to bring you? Oh, poverty, loss. The bank account's going to fall apart, my job's going to, et cetera, et cetera. As opposed to, if any of those horrific stories bring anything up in you, forgive us to those things, remove those things, plant a different vibration. I know a man named Yeshua who came to bring me life and bring it more abundantly. And I'm on that, and I'm going to move with that and be in appreciation of the abundance that the universe offers me. Because my Father owns the universe, I am wealthy. I am wealthy in spirit. I am wealthy in being. And when you give that instruction set to the Creator reaches out and brings you exactly what you've asked for. Look at what you're getting. That's what you've been asking for. Change your asking through forgiveness, and you get to live in a whole new and different world. And that world is one where, as you become more and more conscious you set up to have the best year yet of your eternal life. We are here with MindShifters Radio 5 days a week to support you in creating the best year yet of your eternal life. And it's a delight to share the planet with you. We hold the space of love. Blessings.